Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Flo and today's video is a November reading wrap up. Also, if you can see a plaster on my nose, it's because I had a mole removed. So all good, other than it being like a little bit distracting on my face. But yeah, that is what is on my nose in case you were wondering. Anyway, back to the reading wrap up. So this month has been a little bit of a slower month for me. I think it's because I read some pretty thick books, so it took me longer to get through them. Normally I average between like 10 and 15 books, but I think this month was in the region of like 7. So a lot slower than normal, but I still did enjoy everything I was reading. And I guess maybe it's because I've been doing a lot of my own writing and getting stuck in with that. So that might be it as well. And also, I don't know if you can see that far in the background, but I've put my Christmas decorations up. So I'm fully saying goodbye to November and I'm excited to get into December and read like a few other festive books as well and really get into like the holiday spirit now that Christmas is right around the corner. I can't believe I've also got my work Christmas party in like 2 weeks. I have no idea where this year has gone. But let's get started into the November reading wrap up. So the first book I read was No Worries If Not by Lucy Nichol. I think I read this between October and November. It was sent to me by HarperCollins and essentially it follows a girl called Charlotte, and I listened to the audiobook of it, and the audiobook actress was Geordie, which was really cool to listen to. I think it was set up north and I wonder if the author is also from the north. I don't know. Anyway, but I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the plot of it. It's just not usually the type of book that I read. I was kind of drawn to it because the fact that it says no worries if not on the front, and the whole premise of this book is that the main character Charlotte apologizes too much, and the focus is really on her professional life and how she always signs off emails with no worries if not. And I find this quite funny because I think when I'm in my like corporate career, I definitely notice I over apologize for things or I seek permission for a lot of things. So I really felt like this premise of this book really grabbed me and that I could really connect with and empathize with the plot of this, I think, and like see myself in this main character, which was really enjoyable. I did find it really easy to listen to. I think the only reason I gave it 3 out of 5 stars is because unlike a 4 or a 5-star book where I'm really gripped, I found myself like flipping to music as opposed to listening to the audiobook, whereas normally if it's a 4 or a 5-star read, I constantly want to listen to it and get through it, whereas this one I just wasn't that bothered by. Whilst the idea and the premise of the plot I felt kind of interested and intrigued by from like personal experience, I didn't then find like the actual execution of the plot or just my general enjoyment of it just really wasn't up there with what I would consider a 4 or a 5-star read. So yeah, I would recommend reading it if you're kind of like me where you over apologize for everything. It really did teach me and open my eyes to some of the like bad traits that I have and the way that I carry myself. I did find it funny because the main character goes from sort of one extreme to the other where she doesn't apologize for anything for a year after realizing that she apologizes so much. It was funny, it was lighthearted, I enjoyed it, but maybe not as much as I was hoping I would when I started reading this book at the very beginning. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read was by Kennedy Ryan and it continued the Hoop series. So it was the second book and it's called Blogshot. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Again, I don't know what it was at the beginning of this month. I just had a bit of a 3-star pattern with reading, I guess. The 2 main characters are Jared and Brennan, and the book starts where they're in college and Jared is trying to get into some like secret society of his college, and it's kind of like a frat sort of vibe, I guess. And it also follows Brennan. So they're both friends. So Jared and Brennan are friends. They have the same classes together. I think Brennan is like a bit nerdy, whereas Jared is trying to obviously get in with this cool crowd. And I guess like the trope would be like cool guy, nerdy girl type thing. Good girl, bad guy. I don't know. Anyway, but they are sort of uncharacteristically friends. And I don't think many people know that they're friends. And anyway, so he's trying to get into the secret society. And one of the like dares they give him to get in is that he needs to sleep with her because I guess she's like not considered desirable or whatever. But the funny thing is that he has had a crush on her the entire time. When they say that he needs to go and hook up with her, he's like, absolutely not. I don't want to be like in this society anymore and he leaves, but then they end up hooking up anyway, and I guess because of miscommunication, she thinks that he's done it because of this bet, and so they stop speaking. So then fast forward, when they're both in the depths of their career, they are, I guess, from lovers to enemies at this point. Were they ever really lovers in the first place? I don't know. Anyway, it flashes forward, I can't remember how many years, but they're both like thriving in their careers. They then meet again, but she obviously hates him because she's like, you screwed me over in college, and thinks he's a really bad guy. And it's, I guess, about his redemption and showing that he wasn't the bad guy that she initially thought that he was. And of course they fall in love, they become lovers again. But the problem that I have with this book is Brennan is in a relationship, so there's like a cheating trope, which I don't love. And then the other thing about this book as well is that Jared gets ridiculously possessive, and I found it a little bit toxic. And I also was a little bit disappointed because the first book in the Hoops series is so emotionally gripping, twists and turns. I was crying. I felt like emotionally like drained, but also exhausted and gripped and obsessed with it as I was reading. I went through so many emotions, whereas this one just felt a bit more surface level, so I didn't really connect with it, and I didn't love how toxic Jared was. But I would still recommend it. I would recommend the Hoops series in general. The first book is by far the absolute best. And then the next book I read was Redeemed by Lauren Asher. This will be in a reading vlog in a few weeks' time, I think, so make sure you check that out. But it's the last book in the Dirty Air series. It follows Santiago, which is the brother of Maya, who you see in the first book, and the story also follows Chloe. So Santiago was an F1 racer, and he leaves the industry due to an injury, and he sort of hides out in Italy. He's got this house and he's very secluded. And then Chloe is American. She takes like this ancestry kit test and finds out that her father is living in this remote town in Italy, which is where Santiago also lives. The tropes are fake dating, and so the way that these two characters meet and the reason for them fake dating, to me, seems really bizarre and a little bit forced. I just felt like the author just wanted to add that trope. When you look past that, the plot is really enjoyable. I love reading Lauren Asher books. I love the character development and how they become better together, and I just love that journey that Lauren Asher always seems to take you on whenever you read one of her books. Like, the characters have these issues that they're both combating separately, but then when they get together, they combat them together, and it's just really cute, and it's, yeah, just a really nice story and just really complements the whole Dirty Air series. I loved it, and I loved the element of seeing the characters in all of the other books as well. Like, I think in book 2 and 3, the characters were dropped in at the end of this book to wrap it up, and that felt a little bit forced, but I loved seeing like Maya and Noah throughout this book because of their connection with Santiago and how their kids are in it as well. It's really sweet. But yeah, I just overall really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Would recommend the whole series as well. So the next book I read was Great and Precious Things by Rebecca Yarros. I gave this book 4 stars. I would maybe say more 3.75 on reflection, and also ignore the fact I've still got the sticker on this book. I can never bring myself to take them off in case I rip the front, but anyway. I had high hopes for this, so leaving Fourth Wing and her fantasy books aside, I read The Last Letter, which was her other romance novel. She's written a few non-fantasy books, and Last Letter was incredible. It was 5 stars for me. I'm still thinking about it today, like a few months after reading it. So I had high expectations going into this. I'd say it fell a little bit short of that, and maybe it's just because I read The Last Letter first. But this follows 2 characters called Camden and Willow, and they both grew up in the same small town together. They were friends from when they were kids. Camden went to war. He also went with his brother. They both served in the army. However, his brother was dating Willow before he went into the army. They were sort of childhood sweethearts. But Camden's brother dies in combat, and Camden is considered like the bad boy of the town, and everybody, when he comes back from war, blames him for his brother's death. And so when he gets back to town, he's not well liked, a pretty much like bad boy trope, like stay away from him kind of vibes. And Willow is years later still trying to deal with the loss of her boyfriend at the time, which was Camden's brother. But the story kind of unravels how sort of Camden and Willow were always destined for each other, and it shows their connection, but also they have a lot of in-depth family struggles. Like Willow has a bit of a strained relationship with her parents, and she also has a sister, but she has a really good relationship with her sister, and her sister has a kid, and it's the cutest kid ever. So I love seeing snippets of her in the book. And then Camden has a strained relationship with his other brother, but also his dad. His dad has dementia, and so he comes home trying to help with his dad's care, but there's a lot of different twists and turns in that, and a lot of in-depth drama and strain on both of their families. And then when they come together, they see how the town reacts to them getting together, and the misconceptions over Camden and who he is as a person. The only reason I guess I didn't give it a full 5 stars was because I didn't feel as gripped to it as I did The Last Letter. Like, that is on a pedestal for me, and so this one fell a little bit short of it, and I wasn't as gripped or as sort of emotionally invested in the plot, but I still nonetheless really enjoyed it and would recommend it. I love her romance books, and I love that she writes fantasy and romance, and she has such an expansive range of books that she's written, so I would recommend reading this, definitely. So the next book that I read was Hookshot, and this is also a romance and is the final book in the Hoop series by Kennedy Ryan. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The main characters are Lotus and Keenan Ross. Keenan is a single, divorced dad, and Lotus is 11 years his junior. She is also Iris's cousin, who is the main character in the first Hoops book. Keenan is a basketball player, and it follows his struggle with navigating divorce with a wife that kind of wants to get back together with him but cheated on him. So they are raising a teenage daughter. I think she's a teenager. I can't remember how old she is, but she is, I want to say she's like 13 or something. I don't know. But he has a daughter, and he's trying to co-parent whilst also navigating quite a difficult relationship with his ex-wife. And so with that family dynamic, you feel a bit gripped and you get really annoyed by the situations with the ex-wife, and you kind of want to shake her and be like, let him live his life. I was getting agitated in scenes where she was being really annoying. So I know that whilst I felt annoyed, it was a good thing that that book like brought out so much emotion out of me when I was reading it. And then with Lotus being Iris's cousin, you see glimpses of her in the first book, and you know that both her and Iris have had a pretty bad upbringing with their mothers and pretty absent mothers, and their difficult relationship with men off of the back of that. There is also some trauma that Lotus suffers when she's younger, and that really plays out in the book. I would check the trigger warnings, but you get glimpses of why she doesn't trust men. And so Keenan doesn't want to date women because he has this difficult relationship with his ex-wife. Lotus doesn't want to date men because she doesn't trust them. She's seen the negative effects they've had on her mother, but also her aunt. I just love that they're both trying to resist a relationship, but they both find each other. And I love seeing their characters develop together whilst also battling some of their past and their history. I would say it had like deeper emotion compared to the second book in the series, but not as much as the first book. The first book is by far the best book out of all 3, but I still loved the whole series overall and would recommend reading it. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. I have clearly been reading a lot of Rebecca Yarros this month because I also read The Things We Leave Unfinished. I did not like this book. I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. I struggled with it compared to her other ones. This feels very like historical fiction-y. So it follows a main character, Georgia, and a guy called Noah, and it's supposed to be enemies to lovers, but I think maybe I just wasn't paying much attention because I didn't feel like they were enemies to lovers. I just felt like Georgia didn't really like him that much. But essentially, Georgia has gone through a divorce and her grandmother has passed away, and her grandmother was a writer and she has a book that wasn't finished. And so Noah is brought in by Georgia's mother to finish this book. And so you see the weave between sort of Georgia and Noah in present day, and how Georgia doesn't want him to finish this book and doesn't agree with her mum trying to get the book published because I think her mum is just after money essentially, and Georgia is wanting to preserve her grandma's wishes. But long story short, Noah gets called in as a writer to work on this book anyway. Georgia sort of has him in close proximity to make sure that he's writing it in a way that her grandmother would have wanted and would have been proud of. And then you also see the history of Georgia's grandmother and all the family secrets that get uncovered during, I think it's the Second World War. And so it's very historical fiction. You get past wartime chapters and then you also get present day chapters. Just really not my cup of tea. I kept getting distracted, didn't feel immersed in it. I just kept my brain just kept getting distracted and I just spaced out a little bit as I was kind of reading it, and so that indicates that I wasn't gripped or enjoying it that much. It was a alright story. If you like historical fiction, I would recommend reading it, but it just really wasn't my cup of tea, so 2 stars. And then the next book that I read on my Rebecca Yarros hype is the second book after Fourth Wing, which is Iron Flame. Much like everyone else, I read it as soon as it came out. I got it on Kindle because this book is so thick, you will not catch me carrying this in my bag. Highly anticipated because I absolutely loved Fourth Wing, and I gave it 5 stars. I adored it. I did find the ending a little bit, I was like, oh, this is so annoying, but I cannot wait for the next book to come out. I was gripped the entire time, even though it's super thick. Just to give a general overview, this is probably me giving more of an overview of Fourth Wing, because every time I try and give an overview of Iron Flame, I feel like I give a spoiler. So it basically just follows a main character called Violet, and she is entering a war college to become a dragon rider, and there she meets her sworn enemy, which is Xaden, and they end up enemies to lovers. Slow burn in the first book, and then the second book is them kind of navigating their relationship, so it's really nice to see. But the politics in this world that Rebecca builds gets ramped up so much more in this book. A lot of people have said that there's more politics than anything in this book, but I thought it was perfect. I felt like the story behind not just the romance, but everything else just so on point. This book is phenomenal. If you haven't read Fourth Wing, read it, you will not regret it. So that wraps up the books that I've read in November, minus this book. You will be like, Flo, why are you reading your own book? So this is my debut novel, and to explain, I have been going through for the last few weeks this up and down emotional roller coaster feeling with my writing, massive imposter syndrome. I am dying to become a traditionally published author, and I would love writing to become a full-time career of mine. I'm currently writing at any given opportunity outside of work, and I have written 2 books that I've self-published, which is Complicated You, this is my debut novel, and then the second book is Complicated Us in the same series. And at the moment I'm writing my 3rd book that I'm trying to get traditionally published. I am still in the writing process of the first draft, so I'm nowhere near querying agents or anything yet. But I received a message that somebody that has a lot of followers had bought my book, and it freaked me out. I am of course so happy and so grateful that she managed to find my book. This is a little old book on Amazon, and I have done everything myself, from sourcing an editor to getting my friend introduced me to a cover artist designer. I have edited a lot of this book myself, and I don't have the finances to make this book up there with the likes of some of my favorite authors. I guess I've had such bad imposter syndrome when I released this book that I was like, I don't think I can make money off of it. When people buy this book, I want their money to go to charity, because I don't feel good enough as a writer to have and keep the money for myself. So Samaritans get about £10 for every paperback of this book that is sold, and then I think it's £7 for every Kindle book, because my imposter syndrome is so bad. But even when this influencer messaged me and said, oh, I've bought your book, I was so freaked out that I was like, oh my god, I need to read it again just to check that it's okay and that it's good. That is why I've been reading this book. It was a bit of a imposter syndrome meltdown, as I said before, but I also want to hopefully see it as a good thing. A, I've seen how far my writing has come. B, I'm really proud of myself for publishing it. And C, I loved the story. When I wrote it, I was going through such a bad depressive episode that this book quite literally saved my life. I think I need to let it go and not be scared for people with lots of followers or anything like that to pick up my book and read it. I should want them to. I should be proud of it. I just get so nervous because writing is an art form, right? It's like an extension of almost your soul, as embarrassing as that sounds or cringe. I just feel really vulnerable when people pick up my book, but I want to encourage people to read it, and I want to encourage people to read both of the books and see how far my writing has come and support me on this journey, because I want to become an author and I need to learn to back myself and not be so unconfident in the work that I do, because this brought me so much happiness and peace as I was writing it. I love the plot, I love the characters, I fell in love with them so much. And so I should be really proud of this. Like, I'm using my insecurity to make money for charity, which is amazing. Like, the majority of the book price goes to charity. So I'm gonna try and back myself more. I know I need to let it go. I know I need to be proud of it, and I need to be happy that somebody with such a huge following has bought this book, but it scares me nonetheless. So that is why I randomly read this. So that wraps up the books that I have read in November, and I'm really excited to read more festive books now that we're getting into December. And I should promo my book and say that Beyond the Waffle, if you would like to read a book that's sort of YA, new adult romance featured in university with heavy topics of mental health representation, please do pick it up. The royalties plus a little bit more go to Samaritan's charity, so your support would mean so much. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.